So I'm very happy to share this class with all of you, and especially in this day, the Earth Day. Now, a little presentation before starting. So I'm Elisa Fusi. I'm an herbal medicine practitioner, psycho-oncologist, and psychosomatic medicine practitioner. In the last decade, particularly, I have integrated my studies around chronic disorders, not only major chronic disorders, but also minor chronic disorders like endocrine, autoimmune, inflammatory disorders in general, also gastrointestinal disorders related to the subject. And the fact that we are diving into complexity, that's also interesting, because when we speak about chronic disease, definitely we are speaking about a more complex sets of disease and symptoms. And now, as I suppose some of you are here for personal reasons, some for professional reasons, I'm going to give you a general idea of what we know about chronic disease from a different perspective. So not just through conventional medicine, but also through a more holistic point of view, and trying to investigate what I call the web of illness, because it's kind of very intricate, like a spider web. And so we are gonna see together some of these mechanisms, and also we're gonna see briefly low-grade inflammation, which is the common core of most of these disorders. And naturally, we're gonna land on solutions, so possible solutions, not only to fix or to remove the symptoms, but definitely to reverse the situation, come back to a state of well-being, definitely, or improve the quality of life. The main objective of natural medicine in general is that, so improving quality of life from all different spheres, so spiritually, mentally, and physically. So if we are all ready to start, I'm going to speak first about the characteristics of these disorders. Maybe you know already, but it's nice to point the characteristics, because some chronic disorders are like considered not chronic, but they are. So we're gonna see. First characteristic, I would say, is the long-lasting phenomena. So this can be literally in the span of years, decades. And even if at the beginning symptoms are silent, so let's say it's very difficult to spot them, because they may occur also in different periods, reappear, then they're gone, they're vanished. So it's very difficult also from conventional doctors to spot a chronic disorder at the beginning, in the very first phase of manifestation. Then the slow development, this is one of the major characteristics, because when we think, for example, of an acute disorder like an infectious disorder, like, for example, malaria, gastroenteritis, no? And we have a common agent involved, which can be a parasite, for example. And then we have acute symptoms. They actually very quick, the manifestation is very quick, and in general, they require instant attention. Here we have the opposite. We have slow development in time. So time is actually one of the most important ingredients here. And there is always a period of latency or more, meaning like for a certain period, even if the symptoms have been very much manifested and present, they can disappear. And this is called latency. And it's very much common to all chronic disorders. So that's a tricky point, because one thought to have removed the disorder, but the disorder is still there. It's just a latency. Then the fact that some people, they have symptoms that are less intense, this is very common as well. In fact, the intensity can vary in time, but also it's very personal. So it's personal at the end. There are some chronic disorders that are progressive. The nature of progressive disorder means they start with few symptoms and then increase both numbers of symptoms and also the intensity. And then we have also more intermittent, as we said, no? They can have peaks on both sides, down and up, down and up. And yeah, they can be both also. The characteristic we're gonna here discover more is that it's very difficult sometimes to diagnose properly a chronic disorder, because sometimes they overlap. We have more than one, and that's very complicated to analyze because the symptoms are overlapping, also different systems of the body that are involved, so it's not just one. And in modern medicine, they say there is no cure. There are only treatments, meaning you can be treated, you can remove symptoms or actually palliate them, potentially improve your quality of life without impairing your daily life. And that's the, let's say, modern approach. But we're gonna discover together that there are other ways to treat these disorders and potentially to revert the situation. Now, a little overview, just some numbers to have an idea. It's true, chronic disorders are on the rise, especially because the major chronic disorders that we all know are classified in different major groups, 10 of them, arthritis, for example, and progressive disorder in general late in time, so when we age. Asthma, very common even in young people and now on the rise. Back pain, cancer is considered to be a chronic disorder. And then we have all the big group of cardiovascular disorders, many of them. This is considered chronic. Then we have definitely also metabolic disorders like diabetes. And here it's important to notice that we have also a series of mental health conditions like depression and anxiety that are considered to be chronic. For certain people, these disorders, they can last a very long time and they can be progressive or intermittent. So almost 50% of adults, especially in the industrialized world, they have one or more chronic disorder. This is a big number. Then we have 7 of 10 deaths are definitely caused by chronic disorders that are in the major group that you've seen already. But it's true that it's not just about death, because we're speaking about disability. Some of these disorders like asthma or the obstructive pulmonary disease, they really impair life. These are considered to be major disorders then. Here I would like to concentrate on what we call the minor chronic disorders, definitely on the rise and also spread amongst the population and affecting also young people, even before 30. Meaning, like, if we start to have a chronic disorder when we are 30, there is a big probability that we're gonna develop one or more later in age. So that's the major alert we have now. But no worries, because we have tools. And so that's why we are here. So, in fact, when we speak about young people, we speak about mainly endocrine disorders, so affecting different glands, specifically also the thyroid. And also what is called the adrenal fatigue syndrome, which is now more and more common and can be also the major of the chronic disorders we may have, or the secondary one. Can be also a consequence of having already a chronic disorder. Endometriosis as well is on the rise between young women. And there is then the vastity of what is a big group of minor ailments, so not life-threatening, but still very serious and impairing, which are called the gastrointestinal chronic disorders. So it's not just gastroenteritis, stomach pain that is temporary. We're speaking about consistent pain and consistent symptoms. An example would be Crohn's disease, IBS, and more serious also gastrointestinal disorder like colitis, ulcerative colitis, and also all the varieties of different ulcers affecting the stomach in particular. Now, a recent research pointed the fact that more than half of adults in this period of their life, so young, in between 18 and 34 years, they had at least one chronic condition specifically from this group. And later in time, they may develop another one, and it's a big percentage already. Now, these are not as recent as the ones that I have seen. Data are actually pushing the numbers, especially in the last 5 years. Definitely, if you have questions, there is an open chat. You can write the question over there, and we're gonna see to reply at the end. I would say try to be more generic, because if you go into the personal, in general, even if it's an advice, it will take hours to, to investigate better. But yeah, if it's a general question, definitely we will be able to reply here. Now, another thing that I think is very important to mention is that all chronic disorders, there are no exceptions, they are multifactorial, which means like there is not just one cause, underlying cause, but there are many together. In fact, we work on what we call the accumulative elements of a chronic disorder. When I say we need to investigate, it means we need to open all the knots to understand which elements are collaborating to create the disorder. So not just one. Same like to say just smoking tobacco probably will not be enough to develop like an obstruction to your lungs or cancer. So it's definitely more than one factor. And also time, it's not happening in one day. We actually need time to develop a chronic disorder. That's why we need to be very attentive, pay attention to the body functions, to our systems, organs, how we feel mentally, because there are clear little signs that can guide us to prevent, because we can spot the rising of our chronic disorders, and we're gonna see how. And so it comes to the word preventable. Most chronic disorders, in fact, are preventable. Unfortunately, modern doctors, they don't have a good background, for example, nutrition or on herbalism. They naturally don't integrate this information in the prevention of chronic disorders, but it comes to be very, very essential, thinking of cardiovascular disorders. How many cardiovascular disorders can be avoided just through diet and lifestyle changes? So definitely now we know more, and hopefully we are going in this direction to integrate information that before was considered to be just holistic. This will be integrated in conventional medicine. Now, examples of series of causes that they can collaborate together to create a disorder, a chronic disorders are, for example, obesity, stress in any form, physical stress and mental stress, inadequate nutrition, so malabsorption, for example, not just connected to the lifestyle and diet, but definitely also can be metabolic, lack of exercise, Then we come to the big world of the pollutants, the ones we find in environment, then in our food, water, soil, and so on. Smoking and alcohol also, they can contribute. Definitely most medications, they, let's say conventional medications, they have a strong impact on our health, especially if we take continuously the same kind of active principle through medications. We may have a situation of toxicity, accumulation of toxins, something that our body is not more able to expel, to excrete. We have amazing organs for these, not just thinking of the liver, the lungs, even the skin, through the sweating, kidneys, and so on. All these amazing organs, they act like filters. So just remove what is not necessary from the body or transform it. And filters, they can get dirty. So that's very mechanical, but it's how it works. So these filters need to be clean. That's why also accumulation of toxins is one of the major causes, underlying causes. And we all have toxins in our body. It's okay, because our body is also structured to excrete these toxins. The point is that we want the body to function perfectly so that there is continuous removal of these toxins. And we will see in natural medicine, this is one of the most important tricks to actually avoid or remove the symptoms. Now, another problem is that, as I said, most of these symptoms, they can be silent or not perceived, but they're there are signs. So that when, for example, we arrive to the doctor and we explain the situation, maybe it's already an established chronic disorder. So it has already a course of action in our body. There is a cascade of events. We don't need to panic. There is still a solution there, but it's very common that also doctors are, found this very difficult because of that, because there is a situation already of imbalance in the body since some time. So I'm gonna briefly also explain why classic medications given to treat these chronic disorders are very harmful for the body in time. Thinking of classic anti-inflammatory medications. They can be, for example, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, or they can be cortisone-based. They are both creating an impairment in the body. In time, especially because it's a long-term treatment, when we have these medications in the body, what we have is a disruption of the gastrointestinal system, the microbiome first. Then definitely there is impairment in the organs of excretion, like the liver, in the skin, and so on. And the cardiovascular system, especially cortisone-based medications. So instead of creating well-being, potentially medications in the long term, they can disrupt the functionality of the body. So we try to find the causes behind the chronic disorders and work on what is like the major groups of causes. And then, definitely to treat the symptoms can be something necessary, especially if pain is excruciating, if it's a lot of, symptoms, intensity of them. But definitely it has to be temporary, because most of these medications, they don't fix the problem at all. They actually decrease your immune system, and so you are less equipped also to face other disorders potentially. Why are doctors not able sometimes to help people with chronic disorders, or they give like the wrong tools and weapons? That's very simple. A common doctor in any country actually is trained more for the acute and emergency care, not for the chronic disorder, because actually it's something that is more recent in time. Chronic disorders have been present, progressive disorders have been present in human history. But let's say most of the situations that doctors are able to face are acute situations. And so then also there is a problem in intermittency of these disorders. Sometimes they change. So it's not just to have the same couple of symptoms and so we know what is going to happen. Not really. Some chronic disorders, they have this high variability of symptoms. They may target different organs. So this is because sometimes, as I say, there is an overlapping of more than one chronic disorders. And we're going to see some examples, so it's going to be easier. So it's a long list of limits of conventional medicine. I don't want definitely to attack conventional medicine. I want just to see that there is a possibility of integration. For example, working with more than one professional at a time will help, because sometimes having different points of view respect to the health situation can be very helpful. So multi-professional teams that should be actually treating more these disorders. And then definitely there is not a lot of interest sometimes even or attention given to the psychological, spiritual, let's say, and social sphere of the person, because as we consider stress, for example, to be one of the triggers of most chronic disorders, there is not like attention given to that in conventional medicine. Now, we will see here, for example, as natural medicine, instead, we'll try to not just mitigate the symptoms or even like fix them or remove them from our side, even if they're there. In natural medicine, we want to actually work on what we call the long-term balance, revitalizing the person and giving the person the ability to regenerate, for example, organs or systems that are impaired, which means definitely more of the inner tools and abilities are expressed. So it's not just passivity in the treatment. So that it's very important. I will never stop to say that even the doctors, they can be conventional doctors or naturopathic doctors, integrative doctors, any of them, they should have a different kind of relationship with the patient. It means like more to create the treatment together, to work together as a team, because definitely there is a narrative in the chronic disorder, and we need to be able to speak to our doctors in a different way, meaning like telling a story, literally, how it developed, how it is, which are the elements that have been brought into the illness, how the person is mentally feeling, and so on. So we need to be continuously educated as well. As most people with a chronic disorder, they may have studied independently or learned articles about the specific disorder. They need to keep this knowledge and try to also have a kind of relationship with a doctor where it's essential to exchange information. So this is particularly important for chronic disorders, not for emergency situations, definitely. And now we see how, for example, sometimes physical disorders like chronic pain, thinking of these, can actually unbalance the mental sphere. Sometimes we think of depression like a disorder sprouting from the mind, but it can have also different origin. In fact, we may have symptoms like depression, fear, anxiety, and fatigue, or asthenia, poor breathing, all these different symptoms that can be eradicated in the fact we have already, for example, a chronic disorder, and this is affecting definitely the mental sphere. So it's not like the original disorder. That's why it's important also to help the person to remove this situation of, for example, anxiety or fear, and work towards a balance also of the mental sphere. In natural medicine, definitely we have what we call the mind-body medicine, which is a sub-genre. It's a branch of it where different techniques are brought. They can be even somatic techniques or breathing techniques, for example, that they help the person to cope with these symptoms like anxiety. These are definitely important. We cannot just have an herb, a supplement, which is natural, and think, I'm gonna fix this disorder. We need to think of these chronic disorders as made of multiple factors. We need literally to work with many, many different techniques, supplements, herbs together, not a single thing, but many. So that it comes to be very important to work on what we consider also the mind-body connection. So to actually feel better, because I don't have any pain, I will feel this explosion of joy. If I have one day, for example, not having pain, not having like brain fog and so on, that's what it happens. So we need also to help the individual to regain this kind of serenity, tranquility. But then also the patient is in charge for certain changes, to apply change in lifestyle, for example, or being definitely disciplined about managing the stressors. So to work on the major stress. So it's not just, a series of suggestions we have here. We need just to integrate the concepts in our mind and change accordingly. These are all skills and tools that are essential if you want to face a chronic disorder. And we're gonna integrate all these with the connection with the stress. Now, in psychosomatic medicine in particular, we know that chronic stress, it can give rise to a vast series of chronic disorders. And this is because this chronic stress is long-term, so it's not like the beneficial short-term stress that we need, for example, to create focus, attention, to learn. This is a long-term, so 6 months, a year of prolonged stress in the body means a lot of exposure to different chemicals, the so-called stress hormones like cortisol, that are definitely disrupting different body functions. The glands are targeted. So for example, the adrenal fatigue, chronic adrenal fatigue syndrome is one of the first that we can think of when we think of chronic stress, but it's not the only one. In fact, as you see how stress can impact the body, virtually there is no system in the body organ that is repaired from this attack from the stress hormones. First, the brain, for example. Constant migraines, headache, difficulty to sleep, anxiety, depression, brain fog, and so on. They are all probably also connected to this. Also, we have several digestive problems that are correlated to stress. And so we may have also metabolic imbalance, maladaptation, and a disruption of the microbiome. The heart definitely is affected. So the risk of heart disease is in fact a lot more pronounced in case of prolonged stress. And that's something we all know already, but it's important to remember that this is just stress. What we consider like to be almost normal, it can be very much abnormal. And definitely the immune system. The immune system not only can be weakened, but can be compromised in the sense that can be misguided. That's why we can have an overreactive immune system or definitely an underreactive immune system. A lot of allergies and intolerances, for example, are related to both the impairment of the microbiome for the stress And also because at the same moment, the immune system is going down. So you see already two systems almost collapsing together because they are connected. And this is not to scare you. Everybody can have a moment of stress, but to actually learn different skills and tools in order to cope with stress would be amazing. Because in a moment, we're gonna see like some allies in nature that we may introduce in our life, especially to cope with the stressors, but definitely they need to be coupled with our responsibility, you know, to take action. So we're gonna see, in fact, a list of disorders. Here, of course, I will not have the time to speak about them in detail. We may have, for example, the chronic fatigue syndrome, bowel disease. Definitely, there are also autoimmune disorders here, like rheumatoid arthritis, the lupus, and also some parasitic disorders that are creating then, literally, they are creating a chronic disorder, like Lyme disease. Lyme disease can be one of the causes, underlying causes for other types of chronic disorders, and all the thyroid illnesses. Then food intolerances and allergies can also be considered here as minor chronic disorders, particularly insidious, like I wrote there, because it's very difficult to diagnose them and it's very difficult to find the correct treatment. Sometimes it takes a long time just to define the type of illness. Now, we will not speak that much about autoimmunity, but in the case of autoimmunity, in general, we see that the common triggers of autoimmunity are traumatic events. It can be a physical accident or some more like intense emotional shock, like grief and so on. Definitely, there is also an underlying cause to autoimmunity, which is let's say an infectious disorder that has not been treated for a long time. It can be a bacterial, viral, or even like yeast infection. And so autoimmune disorders, they are particularly difficult to analyze because we are speaking about not just an overreactive immune system. Often we say that, but it's not completely true. It's more misguided. There is some interference in the acknowledgement of what is the self from the non-self, but it's not the only thing happening. So let's see some of these solutions coming from natural medicine. Now, there are several advantages. I'm not promoting definitely just the natural medicine, but I'll say for chronic disorders in particular, more than for acute, natural medicine is amazing. If we have an emergency, let's say we need resuscitation, we definitely need conventional medicine. But here we're speaking about different insidious, slow disorders. So natural medicine, as it works through synergy with different components, we will have an orchestrated effect in the body. So not just targeting a single organ. In general, what we have, it's also the increase of the effects through several different ingredients, considering a plant coming with the full spectrum of ingredients, not just one. We have definitely what we call a synergistic response. So the whole body is affected. In general, there is general and harmonious healing. Side effects are minimal. There will be some interaction of herbs, supplements, and so on with the conventional medications. That's why you need to have a consultation with a professional, even when you are prescribed herbs, supplements, and so on. It's very important because there are interactions, so we need to take care of them. So we may have many different therapies at once, not just herbs, and definitely we can combine them. This is the ability also of creating formulas, for example, mixing different herbs for the specific person. Chronic disorders are, as I said, complex. as people. So we need to create unique remedies. It's not possible just to have one remedy for the person, because, as I said, it can be that the person has multiple disorders together. So we need to always have a long consultation before prescribing. There are no addictive effects in general, no. Low cost, definitely, and can be more mind-body oriented, in the sense that, as I said, the connection with the mental sphere is very important. So the person also needs to collaborate. Beyond that, I want to show you at a glance. When I say it's complicated, here I just minimize the different interactions that we may have just from a stressor, a situation, for example, that we perceive as difficult or traumatic. And you see how the same stressor affects, for example, the psyche, the endocrine system, nervous system, and immune system at the same moment. So it's not just first, second, no, it happens all together. So there are several different systems involved. And you see, there are also different molecules involved. We have cytokines, especially in the pro-inflammatory cytokines, the ones creating inflammations, they are exaggerated. So we have a lot more of them, and we don't have a lot of anti-inflammatory cytokines, let's say, the ones that are balancing the effects of these cytokines. Sometimes we have an explosion of hormones. Hormones are definitely disrupting both the immune system and the endocrine system. So you see already here there is the mise en place, so the foundation for a chronic disorder. All these systems, depending on how much we stress one system or the other, we may develop different disorders. So different persons that we have maybe the same situation, but they may develop disorders that are targeting different organs or systems. Again, I don't want to scare you. This is more like literally education. So to know, for example, the triggers is very important, because, as I said, these disorders, they're there maybe silent, they're not expressing themselves yet, but there is something that can trigger them. In general, there are triggers of inflammation that are common. They're always the same. They can be more than the ones I show you, but definitely there are always these. The first is toxicity in the body. This can come from external sources. Let's say the water we ingest. It can create an imbalance in the body. The cellular, like interstitial cellular environment can be affected, like the digestive system and so on. But toxicity can come also from our body. The inability to excrete toxins, so for example, our lymphatic system is not working properly, or kidneys and liver are not working properly, can create toxicity, our own molecules, or even metabolic disorders. So when we have an impaired metabolism, we can have toxicity in the body. When toxicity is too much, definitely can be a trigger for a chronic disorder to appear. An example, most cases of endocrine disorder, especially with the thyroid, are connected to accumulation of heavy metals like mercury, chromium, and so on. And it's not like one case. Most of the cases that they found, they have a connection with this accumulation of toxicity. It can be also some allergens coming from food, not only from the water, but definitely this is a common trigger of an endocrine disorder. Hormonal imbalance, it can be anything, not just sexual hormones, so any hormone. This can definitely disrupt all the other systems. So we can have a moment of inflammation, then inflammation progressing, and then is out of control, for example. Definitely, and this is very important, gut dysbiosis. what is that? It's when our mucosa, so the lining system of our gut, is not anymore functional. It's not just impaired. It's not like to have just an ulcer. It's literally the numbers of bacteria that are beneficial are less respect to the ones that are not beneficial. So the balance is disrupted, so that also our mucosa starts to not work properly because it's attacked by the same bacteria that in general are under control, and also yeast, viruses, not just bacteria. They can then enter the blood system. This is when we have, for example, the famous leaky gut, when we have a series of different food intolerances, even endocrine disorders. And potentially we can have other kind of disorders in time, like autoimmune disorders. So definitely we know that to have an healthy microbiome is not just helping the immune system and the digestive system to work properly, but also the nervous system. Most cases of depressions that are, sprouting from nothingness are in fact related to this gut dysbiosis, because in our guts we find also the secondary nervous system. And so these can be definitely a trigger. Let's see other triggers. Trauma, as we said, it can be a common trigger for many, many disorders, chronic disorders, and also impaired circadian rhythms. What does it mean? In time, if, for example, we have difficulty to sleep for a period of our life, no problems, the body can sustain that. When it comes to be for a long term, months, even years, then we start to not work properly in all the systems. And so the endocrine system and the immune system in general are the ones that are influenced more. The nervous system definitely is the first to fall. So these can create inflammation and also chronic inflammation. Depression, if it's the regional, let's say, cause, can be a trigger also of inflammation. And now one of my favorite subjects, I hope to not bore you, but low-grade inflammation is what we call the silent inflammation that we barely perceive, but it can be the foundation of a chronic disorder. Because low-grade inflammation can last for a long, long time, it creates cellular stress, so not just our stress, but also our cells are stressed through not only oxidation, but accumulation of disruptive elements like allergen, toxins, cytokines, inflammatory molecules, and so on. So our cells are starting to not perform well. This is all together is called low-grade inflammation, barely perceived. Now we have finally some allies. We're gonna see now just a list, and it has not to be taken like the cure for everything, but it's just to mention you a few tools we have in nature and categories of tools that we can use literally to work on the low-grade inflammation. So we have in nature anti-inflammatory products. They can come from foods, herbs, and in general, they contain these elements that I wrote on the left. One is the so famous coenzyme Q10 that is found a lot in green leafy vegetables, berries, grapes particularly. And then we have a series of vitamins. All the B, C, and E vitamins are definitely strong anti-inflammatory. It doesn't mean we need to take them, as they are like bonbons. They need to be prescribed and standardized for a treatment, but definitely between all like E and C vitamins, we know that they can reverse inflammation in time. Again, then we have the omega-3 fatty acids coming mainly from fish. Fish, cold water fish in particular, so cods, mackerel, sardines, also salmon, and so on. And I had like a conversation with a student recently saying that algae, they contain these fatty acids. Yes or no? They contain more minerals than, but they contain amounts of fatty acids in a form that it's not a lot bioavailable for us. Why is that? If we eat, for example, certain fishes that have eaten algae or krill or other like microalgae, they have metabolized these components, these fatty acids in the body. And for us, as we have grown like as human beings also eating fish and meat, it's easy to get them available. So for the, let's say, treatment of chronic disorder, it's preferable to have fish, or if you don't want to have fish, you can have omega-3 fatty acids in the concentrated form. To have algae means you need like kilos to have the same amount, so it's not really suggested. This is because we need a like concentration of them. Then also we have amazing molecules called flavonoids and polyphenols, definitely antioxidant, anti-tumoral, anti-inflammatory substances found in all fruits and veggies. And so, lucky enough, having already a diet which includes these green leafy vegetables, also tubers, and definitely all fruits, will help. It's called the anti-inflammatory diet for a reason. So removing grains, for example, and meat, and introducing more of these foods containing flavonoids and polyphenols is already a treatment because it's a so-called restriction diet, avoiding inflammatory foods, introducing anti-inflammatory foods. Now we have also a molecule that we produce, glutathione and other precursors, that can be used to reinvigorate the liver first and helping the liver to detoxify the body, but also they potentially act as strong antioxidants, so they fight the cellular inflammation and stress of the body. Others are like same, famous enough in the natural medicine world because it's one of the strongest and able to remove inflammation, especially low-grade inflammation. It's a precursor of glutathione. So we are speaking again of molecules we produce, so natural. Then we have quercetin, again, another famous antioxidant, anti-tumoral agent as well, found a lot in berries, also nuts, and again, grapes. Grapes are a very good source of quercetin. Then definitely you can find, and I can share with you different articles and links with a list of these ingredients found in nature. Fennel, for example, dill, parsley, a lot of aromatic herbs, sage that we already may use in our food, they all contain both the coenzyme Q10 and quercetin. So having them is already good medicine. When it comes to be a treatment, in general, I prescribe the concentrated form, especially if symptoms are very manifested and intense. It's nice to have, you know, a good concentration that cannot be reached just with ingestion of food. So, for example, quercetin can be given as a supplement, an extract in high concentration. And again, it's not harmful for the body. So it's just different because it's concentrated. And again, now I would like to introduce you a category, a special one, of plants and mushrooms, because there are many mushrooms in this list, able to fight stress from multiple sides. This category is called the adaptogen category. Adaptogens, like the word suggests, they help us to adapt So the body will be more resilient. Our immune system in general finds a lot of benefit from adaptogenic exposure. And also it's considered to be a tonic, reinvigorating effect what we have. So we feel better from many points of view. In fact, an adaptogen works targeting the whole body, and that's beautiful. And it's particularly important for treating chronic disorders, also cancer. An adaptogen will help, for example, with coping with the symptoms like nausea, lack of appetite, lack of sexual desire, and definitely also mental pain, depression, anxiety. Some, like you may know, like Siberian ginseng, Eleutero, called, like you may understand, ginseng plants coming from different parts of the world, they have very similar action. They're stimulants. They help us to feel not just more awake, but also we feel definitely energized physically and mentally. So Siberian ginseng has multiple activity, is also strong anti-inflammatory, and helps to reduce the stress molecules. And so it can be used to treat fatigue, chronic pain, and so on. Siberian ginseng, like other stimulants, should be given just in the morning, because otherwise if you take it before going to bed, then you have no sleep. So it's definitely a stimulant. Like other ginseng plants, like the Chinese ginseng, you know. Now, another important member is Schisandra. Schisandra is an Asian plant. You may know the Schisandra berries, edible actually. Now, Schisandra berries and seeds are used in natural medicine to treat a huge variety of disorders. They are strong anti-inflammatory, but they also help our liver to work properly. It's used also to treat depression and other similar symptoms, so mood swings, for example. It can be considered a stimulant, but mild, and definitely it has multiple actions. So it can also help not just to remove inflammation, but to increase the ability of the immune system, for example, to get rid of toxins or pathogens. So it's definitely a booster. Then we have rhodiola. Rhodiola rosea is a succulent plant that is very commonly found, not just in herbal shops, but can be grown. Now, rhodiola is an adaptogen, definitely, but it has a special interest to treat our endocrine dysfunction, especially sexual impairment. Sexual imbalance, meaning like can be used to treat, for example, endometriosis, cysts, ovarian cysts, and also male dysfunctions. Rhodiola is used a lot to treat the menopause syndrome, which can become to be chronic, definitely, and to prevent osteoporosis, for example. Rhodiola is anti-inflammatory then. Also, it has many natures. Now, I present you like the king of mushrooms, reishi. You know reishi because it's very famous. Why is it famous? Because it's very effective. It's not just written in traditional Chinese medicine millennia ago, but we know it's effective, especially for autoimmune disorders like rheumatoid arthritis. People are treated with reishi in high concentration for a period of time. Reishi, coupled with other supplements, it can definitely help an autoimmune situation, removing not just the pain or the molecules of inflammation, but rebalancing the body. So that's very interesting. Now, again, reishi, we know it can be found in different forms. We find it in like extracts, like liquid extracts, powder, and so on. It's preferable sometimes to have the alcoholic tincture, and better the triple extraction, where you have different parts of the reishi in the extract, not just one. Now, a pleasurable taste coming from licorice will make this plant very much used by all herbalists, all the herbalists I know actually in the world. They will put in a way or another in a formula. A formula is a combination of different herbs to target a disorder. If I want to target a disorder, I will always put an adaptogen. And licorice has this great ability to increase the effects of the other herbs or even of the other medications, even conventional medication. Why? Literally, it affects the metabolism, and so that we metabolize more all the ingredients we are taking. So if I couple licorice, which is definitely also treating cardiovascular symptoms, I can definitely increase the efficacy of my treatment. Then we have suma, which is also called Brazilian ginseng. Again, it's not a real ginseng, but it acts like a ginseng, so it's a stimulant, and definitely can be used also to purify the liver, the kidneys. Suma is particularly given again in the morning. It helps people with the chronic pain and fatigue to find back the vigor. So it's a real tonic. It increases particularly mental sharpness. And if you think like to face a chronic disorder with many symptoms, and then also you feel weak in your mind, you feel you have no focus, no attention, you don't retain information, you may need also help to actually get back to lucidity. Suma is also used for that. Let's see more of them. They are becoming very interesting. Why not detoxify the body? Now we know that low-grade inflammation can actually be provoked by toxins, allergens even, or even it can be like the inability of the body to get rid of one of the two. Too many toxins, or toxins are accumulated because the filter organs, they don't work. This is very common when we age, for example. So detoxifying the body will be very important in any treatment for a chronic disorder. This can be done even before starting a treatment or as complementary to an existing treatment. Now, there are general purifying agents that you may know already. I mention here sulfur-rich foods because they have a particular strong and pungent taste. They are very recognizable. All onions, garlic, for example, they are all rich in sulfur. Rhubarb, for example, and other roots, they have this strong taste. They are rich in sulfur. Broccoli, cabbage, again, they are all in this family. Then again, we find glutathione and NAC. They can be taken together. In general, you need someone to prescribe you and get these in the specific moments and with a specific dosage. They both help, again, the general ability of the body to, let's say, remove the inflammatory molecules and to fight the inflammation. They are antioxidant as well. And then we have these two acids called humic and fulvic acids. They're not acids in nature, it's just a molecule. They're found also in general in clays, and they potentially can be taken together or separated. They're very strong purifying agents. In general, they're used to detoxify from environmental hazards and toxins, and so heavy metals, for example. Pesticides, they can be very useful, especially if you have like a gastrointestinal impairment. So, for example, leaky gut, they can be used to reverse the situation and actually also treat bacterial, viral, parasitic infections. And then the famous microalgae, chlorella being the queen, but not the only one. There are several. For example, spirulina will not fall in this category because the detoxifying power of chlorella is far better and proven, especially as a general purifying agent. It acts also in purifying the blood particularly, and it can be taken as a powder. And so it has a very pleasant taste. Now we have also a list of extracts coming from green tea. Not only one, several extracts, they act as strong detoxifying agents. And so they can be also used in capsules with strong concentration. Otherwise, you end up to drink liters of green tea, not sleeping, and you don't even have the right concentration. So sometimes, again, it's important to have an extract. And stinging nettle, we all know that there's several different actions in the body. It's very good medicine, but it's also and definitely a purifying agent. So it helps the body to get rid of toxins. It acts as a diuretic as well. It contains a lot of minerals also to rebalance the liquids, because sometimes we retain not only toxins, but also liquids. So it can help the lymphatic drainage as well. And now we pass to a category which is more specific. They're still like detoxifying agents, but are more organ specific. So they literally increase the function of these filter organs. For example, we have the famous milk thistle. It's a strong help for the liver. It can treat even hepatitis. So milk thistle can be taken as an herb or again as an extract. Then we have sarsaparilla, which is more known in this side of the world, so in Latin America, but it's also commonly found in Europe. And it's acting as kidney and blood purifier. It should not be taken for a long time. Any detox should be done for a specific period. We don't want to detox all the time. We want to detox, then our organs are performing better and we carry on, so we don't take it anymore. Same for dandelion root. Dandelion root actually is not harmful when taken for a long period, but it can stress then the liver, no? Especially because it targets the action to liver and kidneys. That's important also to give a break to these organs. And so we detox for a couple of weeks, even a month, but then we take a break. Then we have activated charcoal, definitely targeting the gut. It should not be used continuously. It can be taken as an emergency remedy as well. It acts not with all substances that are considered toxic, with most of them. Also with parasitic infection, we see that charcoal can work. Definitely, as I said, not to be taken every day. And then we have another, it's a molecule that we produce. So again, it's natural. It contains actually sulfur. So it can be found also in the sulfur-rich foods that were mentioned there. When taken as a single ingredient, it targets the liver and it helps the liver to perform better. So it detoxifies faster. And the last, which is well known in Europe, is burdock root. Now, burdock root, we know it acts as a liver and blood purifier. Sometimes it's used just for the blood. When we want, for example, to clean the blood literally from hormone and inflammatory cytokines, that can be a nice flush. In all these perspectives, detoxifying means also like you need to drink water and being able to see that water is excreted from the body, because water will be the coadjuvant element. If water is not excreted, we need to look better also for other impairment like lymphatic systems, for example, impairment and so on. In general, this detox will be effective. In a couple of days, you will start to feel already like first, the ability to drain the body, and definitely in the long term, you start to feel your body back. So you feel lighter, definitely. Now, the last group, category of natural allies is divided in between natural immunomodulators, not just immune boosters, but immunomodulators, and general tonics. These will target energy levels in the body when we feel, for example, we don't have strength in the muscles, we don't have mental strength, and also an unbalanced immunity, which can be misguided, like in the case of autoimmune disorder, or definitely low, so low defense. In the list of natural immunomodulators, we have many. A lot of mushrooms that will be here. Here, I just mentioned few. Turmeric, for example, that we mention often for being a strong anti-inflammatory agent, is definitely also a strong immunomodulator. It helps the immune system, for example, to recognize an allergen from a self molecule, and definitely not to overfight. So it's modulating the immune response and creating more of the anti-inflammatory molecules when there are pro-inflammatory molecules. So it's definitely balancing. Then we have astragalus, a plant that is, again, well known in Western herbalism. It can be used definitely to increase also the immune defenses. Beta-glucans are a list of polysaccharides, so long chains of sugars, that are found in general in mushrooms. And so, for example, reishi has many of these. Turkey tail, chaga, they all have beta-glucans. So having them in your diet, definitely, if they are edible, like, for example, shiitake, or having them in form of extract, it can help definitely your immune system to work better, especially when we have a chronic disorder. These are particularly good for that. And now another, one of my favorite, resveratrol, especially because you can find it in the red wine, fermented berries. They will have more resveratrol, which is bioavailable. So you can have the skin and the berry of grapes, for example, but you have less. It's more bioavailable in fermented drinks. And so also fermented drinks containing berries, not just grapes, they are considered to be rich in resveratrol, which definitely increase your immune system, ability to recognize what is an allergen without overreacting. So it's an immunomodulator. Another herb which is less known, it's Andrographis paniculata. It was used a lot in the past, and now it becomes to be more popular, definitely because it can help to fight also viral infections. And when they are not treated, for example, they don't respond well to classic medications, they can actually be, they can be very beneficial to have this plant. Now, there is a list of, in this case, plants that I call general tonics. In herbalism are considered to be panacea-like, because they actually affect the whole body and giving like this sensation of well-being. This can come from in many forms. In general, you perceive also the mental stimulation. Most, actually all, of the plants in this list, in fact, they are psychoactive. They modulate also your thoughts, your behavior, your mood. Definitely they affect your mind slightly, and we're not speaking about psychedelics, we're speaking about mild psychoactivity. So we have the king, Panax ginseng, which is used as a strong tonic, it's a stimulant. That's the Chinese ginseng, we all know. It can come also in a form of extract, but it's a very pleasant herb to have, actually root. Angelica root as well, it's used as a tonic. It helps also to detoxify the liver, and it helps the digestive tracts. That can be very useful. Cacao, when pure, it's definitely a stimulant. It gives you endurance and the ability to fight fatigue. So you feel definitely stronger. Guarana, it's a strong stimulant. You feel it more sometimes in the body than in the mind, but definitely it's also psychoactive. So all of them except Angelica, that should be taken in the morning. Angelica can work as a digestive, so it can be taken after a meal to increase the digestive abilities. The other plants that should be taken in the morning because are stimulant. And gotu kola, it's a real stimulant of the mind. So it helps us to be more lucid, present. Definitely it strengthens memory as well. So it's neuroprotective also. I know it's a long list, but definitely we have more plants, more supplements, more minerals, and they all have a strong action in the body when taken in a specific way as a treatment, and with multiple combination of not only herbs and supplements, but also techniques. I don't know if you feel tired. I want just to share with you an example of what I was saying. And then we're gonna see quickly a case study, and then I see the question. So when we speak about multiple therapies, for example, starting from the first, we need to manage stress. There are several techniques. You may find yours. It's not like you have to do all. Different people will have more interest, in working with different techniques. Definitely art therapy, meditation, biofeedback even, they all contribute to reduce stress. Be in nature, I would say. We have also antioxidant nutrition, so including in our diet different molecules that can definitely have an impact on our health. First, anti-acid diet. So to increase the amount of foods, herbs that can be alkalinizing more, and so removing acidity from not just the digestive system, but literally from our interstitial liquid, so the environment of the cells. Then we have adaptogens, for example, a pro and prebiotic diet, low calorie and more nutrients, and then oligotherapy, introducing also different minerals like selenium, which is a strong antioxidant, or zinc, removing toxins. So nutrition should be taken care of through these. And the other example of increasing the physical exercise, we have Qigong, yoga, Pilates, breath work, forest walks, any activity that engage you and you feel you want to actually perform. Then we have what we call the integrated therapies. There are lists of therapies that are sometimes suggested by conventional doctors. We have, for example, myofascial therapy, chiropractic therapies, acupuncture, kinesiology, and so on. These therapies are, in general, body manipulations that they restore, for example, the vitality of the joints, the muscles. They can increase our vitality, the lymphatic system, definitely, and the circulatory system. So imagine like having a treatment, and having each of these can be one per category, plus you have a treatment made of supplements and herbs. Already we are facing a chronic disorder with different tools. So a lot of information in just little time. I will present you a real case study. As I said, in time I received more and more requests and consultation about chronic disorders. So I would like to present you this case study. A man, Manuel, is 36 years old, and he has a form of hypothyroidism, so less functional thyroid, and also ready nodules. It's not serious, can be just the beginning of, but as he has conventional lab tests done, they found out that it's the beginning of an autoimmune disorder, meaning probably it started to have what we call an inflammation that is out of control, so the body cannot cope. when I ask him which symptoms you feel are the most impairing for you, he said, I cannot focus. I cannot even like, you know, have a conversation sometimes. So I don't feel like awake, particularly in my mind, but also in the body. And I cannot meditate anymore because he was actually into meditation and martial arts, definitely. And he has brain fog. Brain fog is one of the symptoms connected to endocrine disorders, for example, or fatigue syndrome, and are very common in other chronic disorders. It's a sign of inflammation. Also, your brain will start to give you these signs because there are so many molecules of inflammation in the body. Now, the first thing I told him, since we are speaking about thyroid detox, and we need to start to have a detox, which means having specific substances like humic and fulvic acids that are found also in clays, and glutathione and sod. Now, sod is another strong antioxidant that can be given for a detox and to improve like the cellular environment. Now, I suggested to start to use morning coconut oil or the extracts with specific fatty acids, but coconut oil is enough, organic, helping with the brain fog. So supplementing different fatty acids. Then, as is already in martial arts, I suggest him to switch to Tai Chi or anything which can help him to focus on the body, and then the mind will actually go with that. He's already in an elimination diet, no gluten, because we found out that gluten is one of the allergens that can first trigger the thyroid function and create an autoimmune disorder. And definitely it can also worsen the situation. So not having gluten in the diet already, it's a therapy. In just less than a month, Manuel started to feel better, just removing that. It doesn't mean he will not have gluten in his life anymore. It's just a diet for a period to restore the function. Then, as treatment with mushrooms, I gave him lion's mane and cordyceps. The first, literally acting as a neuroprotective and increasing like focus, attention. Cordyceps is more also a physical energizer, so giving some strength. And then I told him like to be exposed to seawater, meaning like to actually have some walks in the beach, because seawater exposure helps thyroid function because of the iodine. Now, iodine taken by mouth or inhaled in the form of suspended hydrosol has different effects. The hydrosol that we found close to the rocks, the beach, it's actually very much beneficial for the thyroid function. And then I suggest him also to supplement with some minerals that are essential for the thyroid function, selenium and zinc in a formula, specific formula to be taken, and if possible, to fast once per week as a form of detox to help the fluids to be excreted. So it just have like some, can have not just water, but also some smoothies, definitely fluids, not solid food. Now, he was taking before medications, so he quit the anti-inflammatory and he quit like the specific medication for the thyroid. People sometimes they want to complement, so you may have still like the classic medication and you can have also some herbal supplements, but some of them they interact, so we need to be careful. And in general, that's why it's required a consultation. You need always like to find the perfect ideal formula without side effects. Definitely thyroid disorders are on the rise, especially in Europe. And when they connected the thyroid dysfunctions with the quality of air and quality of water and some pesticides, especially on grains, so not just the gluten itself. We started to think about this disorder. Maybe we can prevent it. Maybe we can just working on the roots of this disorder. So starting to have a completely different clean diet, for example. And this was just an example, real life example. So normal person, a young one, just having, approaching an autoimmune disorder. And without previous manifestation. So I don't know how you feel. I know always like an overflow of information. I'm gonna see on the chat, I'm gonna stop sharing. See, there was question. Okay, this is an interesting one. So, if there are multiple chronic disorders present, how would you structure the treatment? For example, would you focus on treating one disorder first or treat them at the same time? No, in a way, we have replied with the slides because as you've seen, different categories, they have multiple action. So for example, let's say the person has adrenal fatigue, kidneys, and adrenal glands. There are detoxifying agents like diuretics, like sarsaparilla, for example, that they can act both as detoxifying the body, but also specifically helping the kidneys to auto-regulate the liquids and also removing inflammation. So we start to pick, you know, in between all the different plants, mushrooms, and supplements, the things that are helping the body as a whole, so detoxification and fighting inflammation and so on. And then I will also add in a formula specific targets. It's like to disseminate here and there these little weapons all together, they work as a team. So yes, I will treat everything together, and considering that there is an overlapping of symptoms. For example, you may have very commonly rheumatoid arthritis, and then you start to have asthma. Two very unrelated things. It's very common, there are many connections, and that's because also you need to fight the inflammation first, because definitely there is inflammation happening. And the asthma is just an overreaction of the immune system that has been disrupted. So at the end, we will treat generally the body, and then we will go deeper on treating the target. We can have, for example, detoxification for the liver, just you know, to treat the liver, or a blood purifier and so on. But always in the prescription, there is an adaptogen or more, because adaptogens, they are the best weapon for chronic disorders. So there are no, in my opinion, other categories that are fitting better in the scene, because they literally help the body to restore, so to come back to homeostasis. So meaning like they act in multiple ways. Some are mysterious in the way we haven't studied all the mechanisms, but we know the effects, and if we study a few of them, a few of the mechanisms. So then having multiple chronic disorders requires attention, in sense like you have to open up and see clearly what's happening at the level of not just the cells, but tissues, organs, and so on. So it requires more time, let's say, but we have solutions, let's say. It's not like an incurable disorder just because the normal treatments doesn't work. The normal treatment don't work. So that's also a little bit of positivity in the scene, because definitely, yeah, they are on the rise, but also research is on its way to unveil that most of these disorders, they can be fixed, working on inflammation. So definitely all the little tricks we've seen and tools, they can be helpful. Also, if you want to know more, definitely, I give a full course about chronic disorders and natural medicine, which is more a training. Or if you have like, you know, you need more personal advice, you can always like write me, and I will be happy to reply. I don't know if there are more questions. Yes. Yeah, there are no more. So if you feel like drained, you can have some Siberian ginseng. It will help. And yeah, I would like to thank you. And yeah, I will see you in a form or another. So thank you a lot for being present. And if you need the recording of this class, yeah, just write me an email. I will be happy to share it. Have a beautiful day wherever you are. I will enjoy the rest of mine. Ciao, ciao.